it.
Welcome to Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt of the Marquardt Law Firm at marquardtlawfirm.com.
Welcome back to Talk Law Radio. I'm Todd Marquardt, on the radio, on podcasts everywhere, on Facebook Live, on YouTube, and on talklawradio.com. I was just getting my phone out here so that I could take some of your questions by text message, 210-538-4770. You can text Todd at 210-538-4770 or call the radio station at 210-308-8867. This is Saturday, October 26th, 2024. You can call live right now, 210-308-8867, 210-308-8867. Since we're going to be talking about Halloween and the law, I wanted to ask you, Shannon, through your Instagram and your mission to reestablish community in San Antonio, what are you going to be doing through Instagram for Halloween?
I can't believe the stars aligned for me to talk about this. I'm going to dress up my dog in a Halloween costume. And I'm so excited about it. I got her a little chesperita. I don't know if you know Chapulín Colorado.
What is it?
I'll text it to you.
Okay.
It's a back when I was young, the world was a lot smaller before. So if something was on TV, everybody was watching it, so we had a more unified just culture kind of, I think.
Right.
And so he was big back in the day.
Oh, that was a person. I didn't know the Spanish word that you were saying.
It was a character, and he was probably a precursor to SpongeBob, I think, because he was all heart. His superpower was his heart. And so he would, just get into all kinds of trouble, but he would always come out on top because of his heart. And then if you've ever seen The Simpsons, the creator of The Simpsons said that he based Bumblebee Man.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Rag Groening.
He was on the border one day, staying in a cheap motel right on the border, and that was all that was on, that show. And so Bumblebee guy is
okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so Chris and Stephen, during Halloween, what are some typical cases that you see, and how can people that typically don't find themselves in trouble with the law, how can they stay out of trouble?
Sure. So around Halloween and really any holiday weekend or time period, DWIs go through the roof, right? That's what the police are out there looking for. People are attending holiday parties. They're going to bars. They're hanging out and drinking. And so, the most common sense tip is to take advantage of Ubers and Lyfts and things like that. I was thinking about this when I was younger. It was hard. You had to call a taxi and you would hope that they would show up. And I remember sitting there, having called a taxi and just kind of twiddling my thumbs and wondering if they were really going to show up or not. And it was hard. It was hard to make those good decisions not to drink and drive. Nowadays, it is very easy. There is absolutely no reason for anybody to drink and drive. It's, an app and $20 away from having somebody come and pick you up and drive you home safely, drive you and your friends home safely.
Although you can get in trouble in an Uber.
Are you speaking from personal experience?
I heard. You can get a bill, like if you throw up in the Uber.
Sure.
Or if they allege that you did.
It'll be a lot cheaper than a DWI.
True. Very true.
And so even at our law firm, we have this kind of policy with our paralegals and with everybody that, it's a no questions asked. If you submit a bill from an Uber or a Lyft, we're going to pay for it because we know, how much damage DWIs can have on people's lives. And so, as we're going into Halloween, we tell everybody the same thing. It's really easy these days to make a good decision. So get your Ubers, get your Lyfts, and just take that home.
Well, Stephen, I see sometimes billboards that talk about the cost that people have to pay for certain aspects of going through a DWI. What are some of the fines or penalties that people might have to pay?
Sure. So like on a DWI first, just depending on the level of alcohol in your blood, you could be looking at up to 6 months in county jail and up to a $2,000 fine. If it's a second, you could be looking at up to a year in county jail and up to a $4,000 fine. And then obviously the more DWIs you have, the worse it gets. But what a lot of people don't consider are the collateral consequences to a DWI. Like, for example, the loss of your driver's license. And so, if you're working a regular job, you get this DWI, well, how are you going to drive to work now? You don't have a driver's license. And if you're in a position like I've represented teachers or high school coaches who maybe they drive the bus for the football team to get the football team to the game.
Yeah.
Well, now they've lost that license. And so it's not even just necessarily the direct criminal consequences. A lot of the times the things that people worry about are the collateral consequences. How do I keep my job from finding out about this? How do I keep the community from finding out about this? How am I going to drive my kids to school? And so when people talk about the true cost of a DWI, it's not just dollars and cents. There's a hidden cost that goes along with it that, in my opinion, can be much worse than just the financial cost.
I get some of my life lessons about how to stay out of trouble by watching the show Cops. And so just from what I've learned, I would say get your brake lights fixed.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because that's how they know to pull you over.
There you go.
If you have a broken tail light, well, obviously you're trafficking narcotics.
That's right. That's one of the things that I've always been amazed by is you see these cases where people are transporting a large amount of contraband. Contraband is just something that's illegal to have, and they have a broken tail light or the license plate light is out. And you're like, guys, come on. If you're going to be doing this thing, give your car a once over before you go out. Not that I'm giving anyone any tips on that, but I'm just saying I'm always surprised by that.
It's just walking probable cause.
Yeah.
Right.
We have that in immigration too. I'm not condoning it, but if you're undocumented, should you really be?
Exactly.
Yeah, take care of your vehicle. Okay, what are some other typical Halloween problems?
One of the things that we see a lot of juvenile cases, right? We are in a different time than we were maybe when I was a kid. Okay, so when I was a kid, you could do the little pranks of egging somebody's house or doing the stupid things that we all did when we were growing up. But nowadays,
Allegedly,
right? Well, I think statute of limitations has expired for some of the stuff that I did when I was a kid. But nowadays, they will call the cops if you commit criminal mischief, you destroyed somebody's property, you deface somebody's property. And if you're a juvenile, that means you may end up in the juvenile system and going through that entire process. And so you have to be careful. I have kids and I tell them, look, when I was growing up, if you got into a fight at school or whatever, your coach would take care of it, your principal would take care of it. I got swatted when I was in middle school at Salado Middle School. Nowadays, they don't do that. They call the police and the child gets charged with assault.
Wow.
And so...
and then it can be a civil case as well. Then
absolutely. You could be sued for civil liability reasons. So, with juveniles, they have to be very careful in avoiding, kind of the hijinks that we typically see with regard to Halloween. The other thing that I want to make people mindful about is, look, here in the state of Texas, we are very big on protecting our property and our property rights. So if somebody has that no trespass sign out on their property, Halloween is not an exception that allows you to go and trespass on their property.
That's a good tip.
What a good point.
Yeah, and so everyone just be careful with that because, they can still call the police, they can give you a criminal trespass warning, or even worse, charge you with criminal trespass.
Chris, what should people not do if they're upset with people on their lawn?
Well, to expand on Steve, two things. One thing that always pops up is people are surprised that in Texas, juvenile jurisdiction ends at 16, meaning you're going to have 17-year-olds that are still, in my eyes, these are kids.
Right.
And, they're in high school and they're still in classes and they're still getting rides from their parents and things like that. But in the eyes of the law, they're actually adults. And so anything that any crimes they commit or anything they do will actually land them in the adult system. And that actually happens a little earlier in Texas than it does in a lot of other states in the United States. So just bear in mind that once your kid turns 17, in the eyes of the law, they are an adult. And it's a completely different ball game. And if something happens, they're going over the Bexar County Jail, not the juvenile justice system. And so they got to be careful with that. Other thing that we see a lot of is criminal mischief, which is just a fancy way of saying breaking things. And what we've seen is, kids on Halloween, they're throwing things and they're breaking things. And in Texas, we determine the severity of a criminal mischief case by the value of the thing that is broken. And, we used to have this thing where people would take cell phones, and at some point, the cell phones became so valuable that it was actually a felony anytime you took a cell phone. And so the value ladder in Texas kind of creeps up quick from a small nothing case to a serious matter. And so sometimes, we see young people breaking furniture or something like that, and all of a sudden they get hit with a felony because the value of the item was actually pretty high. So real careful with stuff like that.
So I guess that one tip would be to talk to your kids about staying out of trouble.
Absolutely. Yeah. Don't be breaking things. Don't be smashing things because you think it's Halloween and nothing matters.
Well, that brings up a question. I'm glad you mentioned the age. What age should kids grow up? When should they stop trick-or-treating? When should they start doing something else?
Well, it's not so much about kids stopping trick-or-treating. I mean, I have kids in my household. My son is now a freshman at UT. Last year, he was a high school senior. He and his friends went out trick-or-treating, and that's fine. But like Chris referenced, at the age of 17, you are now an adult. So let me give you an example. In my neighborhood, we give out candy. We get a lot of trick-or-treaters. About 2 years ago, when it got late, I didn't want to keep giving out candy, so I just put out this jar filled with candy. And the jar wasn't a cheap jar. It was something from inside the house that last minute we just decided to put outside and put candy in it. And we have the Ring cameras to kind of keep an eye on things. And we had 2 high school girls. Yeah, they were having fun, but they ran up and they grabbed this glass, jar, decorative jar, and ran off with it with all the candy.
Yeah.
Technically, that's a crime. And
Right.
if I wanted to, enforce the law and call the police, I could have done that. And so once kids are around that 17-year-old age, you just really have to warn them about, hey, you're an adult now, and things that you do are going to have adult consequences.
Yeah, how about don't steal candy from other kids?
Yeah.
I mean, that happened
Tell
to me
your story.
when I was a
Yeah.
kid. I'm traumatized by it, even as silly as it is, because that was the first time I experienced evil.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's not like I left my phone and somebody stole it.
Right.
They grabbed my pillowcase from me, and it feels like an assault.
Well, it was.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if they're using force, I mean, it could even be a robbery, right? I mean, so you just have to be careful. And again, the times have changed. These kinds of things, I'm 48. Back when I was a kid, it was handled within the household or within the neighborhood. Nowadays, law enforcement gets involved, and it's a whole new ballgame.
Okay, back to drinking. Because I think that one way that you could stay out of trouble is to not drink so much. Because the more intoxicated you get, the more lapses in judgment you have, right?
Yeah.
So what are some other crimes that you've run across resulting from alcohol?
Well, I mean, when you have minors, you have the MIP, minor in possession of alcohol.
Okay.
And so around Halloween would be a time where you would see those things. I grew up in high school in Lavernia, Texas, which is a rural community outside of San Antonio. So we'd have these field parties, and that's ripe for MIP charges.
Okay, be careful. We got to take another break. When we come back, we'll be talking about sinners and saints, so stay tuned.
This has been Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt, brought to you by the Marquardt Law Firm. You can learn more at marquardtlawfirm.com. And be sure to listen to the full Talk Law Radio show Saturday mornings at 11 on 9:30 a.m. The Answer.
Each week, attorney Todd Marquardt talks about the law. His mission with the Talk Law Radio show and podcast is to help you discover your legal issue blind spots. In the beginning, God had one law. Don't eat from the fruit of that tree. Then came the 10 Commandments. Now we have federal, state, and municipal lawmakers that won't stop creating new laws. Laws that might impact you without you knowing it. Listen to the show and drop a line on Facebook or email host@talklawradio.com and let the host know what you think of the show, the topics you want to hear, and whether you want to be a guest.